Sandra, now to Atlanta, where a motion hearing for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is underway. A judge overseeing former President Trump's Georgia interference case will determine whether Willis and prosecutor Nathan Wade will testify on their alleged misconduct. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor and a Fox News contributor. Immediately at issue, Jonathan, is when the relationship between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade began. They insist that it didn't start until after Wade was hired in 2022, but Wade's former divorce lawyer, who's also a colleague at his law firm, his name is Terrence Bradley, claims that the relationship began way back in 2021 before Fani Willis even became the Attorney General. That's a huge discrepancy.
It is, and this universe just gets stranger and stranger. Usually a former counsel, let alone a former partner, doesn't come forth with evidence suggesting that you have lied. But what makes this very serious is that these alleged false statements were put into an affidavit, and that affidavit was filed with other papers with the court. Keep in mind, Wade and Willis are prosecuting defendants in this case for making false statements and filing false papers or material with the court. So they are prosecuting people for exactly this type of allegation. Now, that's not the type of experience you're looking for in prosecutors. It's the type of thing that raises conflicts of interest. But if it is shown, and it's being suggested there are witnesses to this fact, that their relationship preceded the hiring of Nathan Wade, they're in serious difficulty. I mean, they are being accused of filing false statements with a court.
You wrote a lengthy column on this on your website, and you included a link to the affidavit that Nathan Wade filed with the court, which includes in part the statement, quote, "In 2022, District Attorney Willis and I developed a personal relationship in addition to our professional association and friendship." Again there, in 2022. But Ashley Merchant, who is the attorney for Michael Roman, who brought the challenge against Fani Willis, says since Willis and Wade were not forthright about their relationship in the first instance, there is no reason to believe that they are telling the truth now. If indeed they did not tell the truth in this sworn affidavit to the court, what are the implications?
Well, their position in this case has become untenable if this is proven to be true. Indeed, both of these attorneys could be looking at serious repercussions for filing a false statement of this kind. This was not some aside. This was the core of their argument. This is what they were flagging in the papers and raising with the court, that because the relationship started in 2022, there is less of a conflict of interest or other ethical problems associated with their relationship. If they misrepresented that date, then not only is their position as prosecutors in the case thrown into question, but their position as counsel, as attorneys, is thrown into question with courts. They could be referred to the bar for other possible action.
I want to ask you about Donald Trump's appearance in court, because apparently it just wrapped up there down in Fort Pierce, Florida. It's his first hearing in the classified documents case, in which the judge is asking for sort of defense theories of how they're going to approach the case. But I'm wondering, since the release of the Hur report, in which, and then we see the motorcade just leaving there in Fort Pierce, since the release of the Hur report, in which President Biden was let off the hook for willful retention of documents, which is the exact same thing that Donald Trump is facing 32 criminal counts on, does the whole kind of tone and tenor of this case change?
It has. It's changed legally and politically. It's hard to make the legal case of selective prosecution in most cases, but it is very hard to get away from the glaring contrast. Her report makes out a detailed case of willful retention of documents, of the disclosure of classified material to other persons, and the gross mishandling of documents. Those were all charged against Trump. And there is, I think, a legitimate question as to why that was the case. You know, the most that the White House and his counsel can say is that Donald Trump obstructed the efforts of the FBI. But there's an obstruction charge. That explains that charge. How about all those other charges? And that's the reason Hur had to get into the fact that the president would be a sympathetic defendant and has memory problems. It wasn't gratuitous. It was essential to try to explain why he's not charging the president or thinks the president should ultimately be charged after he leaves office.
Yep. Biden, 0 counts of willful retention of the documents. Donald Trump, 32 counts. We'll see how this proceeds. Professor, good to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.